was born in Montgomery, Minnesota, 8th month, 15th day, 1920. And I grew up on a farm. And then got big enough that I grew up in the Depression years. When I got big enough to make a buck, Uncle Sam grabbed me and said he had a war to fight. And I had my training down at Campbell and Camp Barkley, and then we went over to overseas, and we landed in England. From there we crossed the English Channel into France, and then we got in one hell of a battle in Hiroshima, France.
Okay, why don't we back up a little bit and tell me about your parents. What did your father do?
My father come from Europe in 1898. He was a farmer, and my mother also come from a farm family, because that part of Minnesota is a good agricultural community. Let me continue on now.
Yeah. Did you have any siblings?
Whatever. I come from a large family. I had 6 brothers and 6 sisters. And I'm the only one left now, other than one brother. He's 84. And they were a very good family, a German Catholic family. And we did have a lot of tragedy in my family. I had a sister, she was 25 years old, killed in an automobile accident. And then I had my youngest brother had a brain tumor. He was buried the morning I got home from the Army. I didn't know about it. Then 6 months later, I had a sister, 18-year-old sister, killed in an automobile train crash. And that kind of hurt. It kind of hurt different.
So your mom was busy, though.
Pardon me?
Your mom was very busy.
Oh, she was, yes. And I grew up in the Depression years. You know, my first job, I think I was 16 years old, worked for Green Giant, which was Minnesota Valley Canning Company at that time. I think I got 36 cents an hour. And just didn't have the bucks in those days. Didn't have the standard of living we have today with the running water and the central air and all that. No TV. We did have a radio.
So do you remember where you were when Pearl Harbor was hit?
Yes, I was at home on the farm with my father and 2 brothers and 2 sisters. It was a Sunday morning, and my dad was really a news buck. He always listened to the radio and read paper. We had this Minneapolis Tribune paper, and he's the one that informed me that Pearl Harbor was attacked that day. And I remember one time my father and Hormel cattle buyer, who we sold some cattle, they discussed that European situation, and I don't recall now if it was the first year of the war or the first year of the draft, but they would have sure put foreign journalists to shame, because they really had everything right down the path.
So were you drafted or did you enlist?
I wanted to enlist right up to Pearl Harbor. I want to get in the Air Force. And my father says, why don't you wait till you're drafted? Which I was 8 months later. Being that my 25-year-old sister was killed just about 2 years before that, and then my mother died at 53 from high blood pressure, which at that time they had nothing for. So I thought I'd better stay home, wait till I was called. And that's when I was drafted, went to Fort Snelling, Minnesota, and landed up down in Kentucky at Camp Campbell. And then from Camp Campbell, we went to Camp Barkley. We had 10 months training at Campbell and 2 months of Tennessee maneuvers, and then we went, I believe, about 10th, 12th of November, right around there, to Camp Barkley.
When do you remember first the military mentioning the ASTP program?
Pardon?
Do you remember when they mentioned to the troops about the ASTP program?
No, I don't recall that offhand. I think we had a couple of guys from my company that went, if I remember right, which I found out afterwards.
So what did you think of Camp Barkley? Do you have any good experiences there?
Well, somehow or another, don't ask me why, I thought Barkley seemed a lot better than Campbell. Campbell was a new camp, but being that I just drafted in the Army and it was a very new experience for me, and meeting all these young men. And, to this day, when I see a housing development, it kind of reminds me of Camp Campbell, because they're all the houses pretty much look alike.
Okay, so then you went to Tennessee maneuvers. How was that?
Yeah, we went to Tennessee. We had 2 months of Tennessee maneuvers, and then we went to Camp Barkley.
So nothing memorable happened there? Going to town or?
Not really. Oh, we'd get a chance to go to Nashville. Not every weekend, but I think there was. I know I went there. I know a buddy went there after we were through with maneuvers. But usually we had a pretty tough time, you know. It was wartime at that time, and our training, we did a lot of training.
Okay, I have heard some interesting stories about the train ride. Did you continue on to Camp Shanks, or is that where you?
Well, we went from Camp Barker to Camp Shanks.
Right.
But I don't recall much of that. I really don't. I do have a brain injury that I got at Hurlesheim, and some of this, my memory's blanked out, I guess.
Do you recall the ship ride over? To
Oh, yes, it did. Mm-hmm. That the Empress of Australia. It was a ship captured by the English from the Germans in the First World War, and I understand at one of the reunions that excuse me, that ship was sunk on the way back, taking German prisoners back to the United States. And I felt sorry for the prisoners if they went down with the ship, but I didn't feel, I never had too much love for the ship. I think we slept in the hammock. It was above the table. And that was the first and the only time that we ever did that.
Did you get seasick?
No, I didn't, but my head would, I had an aching head going over, and I wouldn't want to open my mouth too far. Maybe I would have gotten sick. And I remember our platoon, the machine gun platoon, heavy machine gun platoon, had the duty of manning the gun up in guess it was a crow's nest. And I would get a chance to go up there occasionally and check on the guys, and with a pair of binoculars as far as I could look to either side, as far as my eyes would carry me, was nothing but ships. Some loaded with war materials, a lot of planes. But it was supposed to have been one of the largest convoys that ever went over.
So where did you land? Do you recall?
Liverpool, England. We landed, I think, about 2 o'clock in the morning. One thing I remember, there was a big, huge ship sunk in the channel there. I suppose they never had time to remove it. And from a distance, I would see Ireland. Looked just like a big rock in the middle of the ocean. And I have a lot of respect for the English Red Cross, because we got on that ship or that train around 2 o'clock in the morning, and we rode all the way, I guess, through England down to Southampton. We landed at Tidworth, England, and there's several times that they served us sandwiches and coffee. It was really good to get some good food after eating that ship. I don't recall how long it took us to go across, but it seemed like a long time.
So then you were at Tidworth Barracks. How long were you there?
6 weeks, or Tidworth for 6 weeks. And the Red Cross arranged for us to get a furlough to London, so we got to go to London. And I should say that, I got to back up a bit here. We were supposed to land actually someplace in France, but we found out that harbor there wasn't even cleared yet. The enemy was in there yet, so that's why we landed in England. We weren't supposed to land in England, but we went to London, and well, we spent, I guess, a day and a night there. And my buddy and I remember we were looking for scotch, and we didn't find any, but there was a little pub, just a small place right by and I'm trying to think of this train station. It was a huge train station. And we were in there, and I said, look back now, I was just wondering if we were drinking scotch or lemonade, because we wouldn't have known the difference at that time. But the glasses started to shake back at the bar. There was a small place, probably a 10 by 20 building, and the bartender says, that's all right. The V2 or V1 landed someplace, and the glasses started to shake in the back. He said about 5 miles away. But there was 2 of them and I think one during the night that came in, supposedly took out 365 houses. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I do have a lot of respect for the English people. No one knows what those English people went through, because they took it from 1940. This was in 1944. And I've seen a lot of damage around there. And I think, if I remember right, I think we did get in the subway that night, the English subway.
Okay, so then you're at Tidworth Barracks, and then where from there?
We landed someplace in France. And I might say that about 2 months later, that these guys that were, these GIs, my outfit, that were furlough, pass and what have you, about probably 6 weeks or 2 months. Well, there was a lot of those that were captured and killed, because we got into the bulge.
So, do you want to elaborate on that a little bit more? At the bulge?
On the boat?
Yeah.
I don't remember much about it.
No, on the bulge.
Can you say it again, please?
You just mentioned that. Maybe I misunderstood. Did you say that you were at the Battle of the Bulge, or?
Oh, yes, yes. That's where we really met our Waterloo. And I might add to that, we never saw a bed after we left England. We were just intense there till we got ready to go into Germany after going through the Bulge. That was really one of our worst battles. Because we were in Colmar too, but Colmar was one of our easiest battles. I know there was an American that was quite decorated. I won't mention any names. That he got it at Colmar, and I really don't think they were the real German troops, because we had fought. I guess they were displaced person, but they weren't like the Germans. The real Germans there, they knew every trick in the book, and they applied every trick in the book when they got into combat. But I guess probably really the toughest battle we had and the bloodiest battle was at Hurlesheim, France.
What was your position there?
Pardon me?
What was your position in the war?
I was a sergeant in machine gun platoon, but we never like in the Hurlesheim there. I was supposed to have the first gunner and a second gunner and two ammunition handlers, and I had to handle the gun myself. I only had one ammunition handler. The men didn't last very long. I really know what happened to it, other than getting killed and wounded. And the Germans knew every trick in the book. The time of the balls, we not only had them in front of us or behind us and on both sides, but we had them right in our ranks, because they would be perfect. And I remember this one particular time in Hurlesheim. We were trapped in this waterworks all night long. And this German tank come up, and I look back now, and I'll never understand why you only fired that one round. And our bazooka man went out. He couldn't knock a German tank out with our bazookas, so he went out and knocked the track off. And the second German tank come up and pulled that one out of there. And on the south end, I had got my direction mixed up, but the other end of where we were at, but there were a lot of troops in there. They're lobbing grenades in, which concussion, when you throw it in a building, will do the dirty work, and it killed a lot of our GIs. And I remember that particular night, we never ever got any sleep or rest. You could take it when you could get it. And this particular night, I crawled in between, I was so tired, and there was, which I thought these GIs were laying in that, or sleeping in that waterworks. I crawled in between two of them. It was cold, and whenever I woke up, I suppose a couple hours, I realized there was two dead GIs.
It's amazing.
And we didn't get out all that morning. We were firing to the apple orchard beyond the waterworks. The Germans were dug in there, and we were firing at them all morning, and we didn't get out of there sometime in the afternoon. And you never get nothing to eat or anything. And we pretty thirsty. That thirst is the worst thing. And there was I don't know what river or ditch run underneath the waterworks. And somebody found a cord or a string of some sort, and we were so thirsty, so we lowered our canteens down into this ditch or river. And there was bodies, Americans and German bodies floating in there. It didn't matter any of to us. And we had some type of pill you would put in to purify this water after you pull the canteens out. And of course we didn't, I guess if I remember right, you had to leave it in about an hour. But of course we didn't. And that afternoon we got out of the waterworks. And I only had one guy with me. And as I look back, I don't know what happened there. But I got up to church in Herlesheim, and there never seemed to be any Americans around. And I seen one of our radio man was laying there dying. And I went over to pull him. I was going to see if he needed help. I didn't know he was dying at the time, so I went over to see if he did need help. And I looked at him for a couple seconds. I realized that he was dying. I was going to pull a radio off his back. He was our radio man. And just as I went down, there was a sniper, which I didn't know was up in the church steeple. And just as I went down, it was just like it cracked a dry stick by my ear, because my ear rung and I knew he was pretty close, so I got out of there. And I walked past the church. I had my gun laying by the, I guess which would be in the corner of the church. And I seen this, what I thought was an American officer. He was clean shaven, and he was clean uniform. And I went over and talked to him, and he said that he had 4 SS prisoners, and he was going to let them go back. Their buddies wanted to surrender. And I said, don't do that, Lieutenant. I said, because I thought he was a replacement. I said, don't do that, Lieutenant. I said, these are a bunch of fanatics. He didn't say a thing to me, and he turned, and I don't know, he disappeared. But the 4 prisoners walked back to supposedly get their buddies to surrender. And then I run on to another guy from our machine gun platoon. I don't know where he came. But at the time I didn't realize it, but I didn't know where or why there wasn't any Americans around. But actually we were behind the lines. It wasn't behind the American lines or the German lines. And we were going to go down, and this here other fellow, so there's 2 of them, that my ammunition handler and this other guy from the machine gun platoon, I don't know where he came from. We were going to go down in this basement of the house, and I'll go back and get my gun. I had a heavy machine gun. I was supposed to have a first gunner and a second gunner, and I didn't have them. So I had to carry the gun myself. I was wondering why these 4 prisoners, why they were hesitating. They're looking up that church steeple. And I was wondering why they're doing this, and I stopped, and actually they saved my life, because I don't remember a thing. I've got the German threw that grenade down that steeple. And I don't remember much about it. I do remember sometime the course of the night. We were hiding out in the ditch outside of Herlesheim. I and these other 2 men from my platoon. And I said, his name was John, can I say his name? Mm-hmm. John Durandetto, he's passed on now. I said, John, what the hell is going on? He said, well, Greg, he says that there's a tank running around town. They're firing white phosphorus shells in all the houses. And the whole town was on fire. And then I don't remember a thing. I had concussion. I didn't remember it. I didn't know it at that time, but I would come to, and then the next time I come to, I had a blanket over my head. I don't know where I was or how I got that blanket. But there's a guy come along, and he must have been a medic. And I would understand afterwards after the war, so was that we were supposedly cut off, and our company is trying to get to us. And he said, this guy is all right, and he gave me a pill. I don't know if it was sleep pills. And the next time I woke up, I was in the hospital. I don't know how long I was in there. I don't think I was any longer than a week or 10 days. But then I found out when I got back, they thought when I walked back in, I told my doctor that morning, asked me how I was feeling. I said, great. I said, I want to get back as quick as I can. I said, we'd have hardly any men left. And I was with these guys since October 1942, and this was January 44, or 5 already. And the doctor asked me how I felt. I said, good. And I don't know when I had a shower or shaved last, but I remember, and I do kind of chuckle when I think about it. Nurse gave me a clean uniform, everything. I went and showered and shaved. When I got back, I walked back, and she says, who are you? And I just left her, I suppose, a half an hour before. So then next morning, we had breakfast early. It must have been quite a ways back in France, because somewhere along the line, and I don't care much about spam, I'll tell you that right now. We had spam sandwiches to eat. We stopped someplace where it must have been some GI outfit. I don't know what it would have been, but we got something to eat there. Cold water. When you drink that, you're trying to chew spam. There's so much lard or grease in it that in the cold water you couldn't hardly maneuver your mouth. And that's why I always said I would give $1 for a cup of coffee. And then I got back, and they thought they saw a ghost when they walked in, because they didn't think I made it, because there's trees. They couldn't, the bridges and everything at Hurlesheim were blown. And the ambulance couldn't haul these wounded out. And they had to take them out in light tank. And there was 3 tanks of wounded went out. I was in the second tank. The Germans knocked the first tank out and third. That was the procedure. You always knocked the first tank or vehicle and the last one. And then you had them bottled up, and then you worked them over. That's what they did. But somehow that second tank got out of there. And I was on that second tank. But as I look back now, they won about probably a 36-hour period, 24 or something like that, as far as I can tell. That I must have had an angel sitting on my shoulder. And before I got up to that church steeple, I remember talking to a lieutenant. They were discussing the situation. And shell had lit quite a ways away. We didn't hit the ground, but a stray piece of shrapnel had come, and I don't think he was standing a foot away from me, but we were talking, and it just took him from year to year. And he knocked him down, and I yelled for the medics, and he did live, but I understand he just passed away last year. But that was one of the most miserable Januaries I ever put in, December and January I ever put in my life. And I'm 80 years old now.
So I take it you did go back, and so you saw the end of the war, correct?
That's right. And I remember the 5th of May, 45. We're up in Bavaria someplace on the drive into Germany. And we're briefed that morning. It was snow, nice soft snow. It was warm. And kind of reminded me of Minnesota, where I came from. And we were briefed that we were going to do that day on the drive. And then about 10 or 15 minutes later, another order come out that we're moving back. That we were the longest people, or the longest soldiers on the 7th Army line. And I never heard any sweeter words in my life. They said, move back. We took over, my platoon took over a hotel, and I don't know what town it is. I got some pictures of the front of part of it. But I jumped behind the bar, and I was a self-appointed bartender. And these flyers, pilots didn't have any missions that time. They were coming through and we were trading guns. And we just had a big time, but it didn't last too long, I guess, only that day. That was kind of the end of the war for me. With the exception, we were in Buffingen, Germany. They picked out about, this would have been about the first couple days, first part of August. They picked out about 30, 40 non-coms who were going to the invasion of Japan. And we got as far as Namur, Belgium. And we found out that they dropped the bomb. And Harry Truman is one of my favorite presidents. And I found that out. And then we stayed there about a month, didn't have a lot to eat there. Apparently didn't affect us. And then I went to Paris in September, and I worked in the post office there until they loaded us on a boat a couple days before New Year's Eve, because I imagine if they'd let us celebrate New Year's Eve in Paris, probably wouldn't found half the guys. So that was about the end of mine. Then I come home and I got discharged January 15th of 46. And I don't ever want any part of any army again. I'll tell you that.
Don't blame you. What did you do when you got home? Did you start school or?
Excuse me. Uncle Sam was really good to us when he stopped with. There's a lot of programs, the educational program, then the job training. There was what they called the 5220 Club. You get $20 a week for 52 weeks. Now, today, standard $20 a week isn't much, but at that time it was a lot of money. And I drove truck that summer, and then I went into the meat business. Of course, in the meantime, I met my wife, and I went out on job training in the meat business in North Dakota. So I said, we better get married, because if I ever get out to North Dakota, probably never see me for a while. And so then I worked for a person that just wasn't on the job training, wasn't really a good person. So I went to come back to Minnesota, and I worked in another place, and I met a guy there, and we bought out a place. Being that I froze my legs and arms in World War II there at, around Herlisheim, I was only in business 11 months, and I had to get out of it. And being that I was born and raised on a farm, I went farming. I did real well. I retired at 55 and sent 4 kids to college, my wife and I, and I guess that's about it.
Well, that's great. Was there anything else that you wanted to mention? Any memorable event that we missed?
Well, I got to talk here all day about it, but I don't want to get into a lot of things. I had been driving down, a volunteer driver for our veteran service officer. For 15 years, I drove the van up to the Veterans Hospital in Minneapolis. I met 2 World War II veterans up there one time. I was about 75 years old, and then I said that if I'd have known what I had to go through, the war and the after effects and everything, I says, I don't think and there was a firing squad there. I says, I think I ought to take that firing squad. And they both agreed with me. One was a World War II veteran, I think the other one was a Korean. They both agreed with me that they would have did the same thing if they known. But all in all, though, I guess I come out good. Things went well for me. I did have a time, but to go on, I had a large dairy farm, and I guess that was the best thing in the world for me as I look back. I didn't realize it at the time, but I don't think I could have been around. There's still days today that I just have to get out of the house. I retired at 55 when my wife and I built a new house by a lake, and there's just days I have to get out of the house. We have a split floor at home, and she's got the drapes pulled downstairs. Boy, I can't, and I don't know why I can't be in the dark. Just, I have to go, and it's not really down the basement. There's windows out to the side of the house which shows daylight, the sun, and all that. But I did not really have a lot of after effects. Like I understand a lot of guys where they. I know of situations where some of the guys went home and committed suicide. I know where someone went home and they're alcoholics. I met a girl in here not long ago. She was a security guard down in Mankato. She said she had 6 brothers in World War II. Or I'm sorry, 6 uncles. 2 of them went on D their hair turned white. And the other 4 were alcoholics. And I did have a bad time back about 93 or 4. And I have to take a special medication to sleep at night. Sleeping pills went bought. I was up to when I went to Veterans Hospital. I don't remember what doctor I had. I mean, if she was a psychologist or a psychiatrist or what she was. But she was telling me there were a lot of World War II veterans that were going to drugs and alcohol and stuff. But I always felt that I was too much of a man to let anything like that get the best of me. But things turned out real good for me. Like I say, I retired at 55, sent 4 kids to college, and I got 4 good children, 8 grandchildren.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Well, if you don't think it's any good, throw it away.
No, that was great. I appreciate it.
It's kind of hard sometimes to talk about that.
Okay. You mentioned another memorable experience.
Well, we spearheaded from General Pat, 3rd Army. We spearheaded from, I think, Worms, France to Speyer, Germany. We got to Speyer, Germany, Good Friday, 45. And I remember there's 7 shells come over. 88s, they were wicked ones, the Germans had. And I said, thank you, Polsky. Now, we always would say that the displaced person, or that the displaced person, I guess, is what Germany had working their defense plants and what have you. And they would sabotage the ammunition and stuff. So I said, thank you, Polsky. And then I remember Captain Snydstrom. He was our motor officer. He went out to get a tank. And to me, as I look back, I don't understand what happened to the tank, but I thought that in the tank's tracks has to lie flat on the ground in order for it to move or maneuver any place. And he was driving the tank in there. The assistant driver was sitting there. He didn't have any head on. I suppose the German they had these Panzerfaust. They were wicked. And we got things calmed down, and we went into church, the Catholic church there. And I remember the guys going in there with their rifles, steel helmets, and boy, you wouldn't believe the commotion. And I was sitting in front, not too far from the altar, but I remember the American chaplains coming from one side of the altar, and the German chaplain moved over to the other side. And I sat there and thought, here we're killing one another. We believe in the same church, and it just kind of struck me funny. But I can't recall. We crossed the English Channel at night, but I just don't remember. I just don't remember at all. Then I do remember someplace along the line, I liberated a pink bottle of champagne. I was going to keep it for a special occasion. And Easter Sunday of 45, I don't know why they told us to dig in, because we were on spearheading all the time, why we should be digging, but somebody must have got an order mixed up. And they're out digging a foxhole. Of course, we had the tools, the shovels and picks from the half track. They're the big ones. And I opened that big bottle of champagne. I don't remember drinking any or who else drank it, but I thought that was a special occasion. The Easter Sunday of 45. I guess that's about it.
Do you remember having any experiences, personal experiences with either the French or the civilian Germans or anything like that?
I do remember one time getting into one German town, and we were supposed to look around and try to find see if there's any German soldiers around hiding, that sort of thing. And I got into place here. We didn't see the opposite sex for about 8 months. And here, the guys, some of our guys in the head there, they have got the father and mother kind of lit up with liquor and stuff. And boy, there were 5 girls there. They were pretty, really beautiful. And I remember things were looking pretty good if we stayed in that town. But some tanker, he got more liquor than he could have had. I guess one of these infantrymen took his girl away from him, and he shot through the door with a 45 caliber. They used to call them grease guns. They're the gun the driver had. It was an automatic and had a 45 slug in. And he shot through the door, and boy, those gals took off, and we never seen them again. Then I guess we moved out of the town. But like I say, there used to be little incidents like that that you get to you. Where I remember one was Christmas Eve when we attacked Ottweiler, Germany. And Ottweiler laid down. We're digging around Ottweiler, and Ottweiler laid down in the valley. And I still to this day don't know why we attacked him, because we just got a bunch of guys wounded and killed and stuff. Then we had to go back to our foxholes. The engineers set up a wire about 10 inches off the ground, and they would attach flares to them. And there was a German running around out there. The poor guy was lost. It was cold. It was really kind of scary after that attack and everything. And he was saying, "Amerikanische Soldaten, I come to you." And apparently that was all the English he could speak. And he was repeating himself. And we're in our foxhole, and I told the guys to pass it down on both sides, and I would wait. I'd crawl out on my stomach and see what was going on, why these flares are going off. I guess I'm getting my story mixed up a little bit. And these flares started to go off, and when a flare would go off, it would go up, I guess, probably 50 feet in the air, and it would light up the whole area. And I know they used to, when we got over there and were briefed on foreign combat, they'd tell us about the Germans, that when you'd hear that flare go off or snap, it would make a kind of a putt sound. Freeze, don't move. Well, that was wrong. We learned from experience, you still had a chance to hit the ground. But when you had that putt, you would hear probably, maybe it'd be 3-4 seconds before it would go off. You had a chance to hit the ground. But anyway, in this Christmas Eve situation, I crawl out my stomach, and here these flares started to go off again. They go off in the air. And there was a rabbit. The tripwire would have, like I say, 10 inches off the ground. He would jump across, he'd trip that wire, and he'd turn around, and he'd go back and trip it again. And I knew the guys, if this continued, they would probably panicked, some of them, because we had replacements. And so I kind of chuckled to myself, and I went back and told them what was happening. But it was little incidents like that, I think a number of them that happened in our combat days, but that you could get a laugh out. Regardless how rough it was, you would get a chance to laugh out. So I think I bored you enough.
Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Well, I hope